Welcome to the Strap and Link podcast, where we cover brands from their inception to their latest release.
It's the Montrous Tudor.
Like I said, better movement, spring drive
So,
potentially, Rolex Oyster Perpetual.
There's Super Ocean here. Now you see this kind of renaissance of Tudor. Finally, in 2016, they achieved the spring drive with an 8-day power. The podcast for watch lovers by watch lovers. New episodes every first and third Monday of the month.
Hello, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Strap and Link podcast with your host right here, Brett and David. What's up, dude? How's it going?
What's going on? Another week. Back-to-back weeks. Everybody's going to get spoiled.
Back-to-back. Wait, was it back? Oh, wait, really?
Release dates, yeah.
Oh, we did just have an episode come out on Monday, didn't we?
Yeah, because we did not schedule good for the month of March, February, whenever that was.
Yeah. We're recording on Thursday, so we just had one come out a few days ago. So we got one coming out in a few days from now, too. Yeah, fun times. Fun times rocking and rolling. Thanks for a few folks that hit us up on Instagram, reached out to us after the last episode. We said, if you guys just want to talk to us, send us a DM, let us know what's up. Feel free to do that on our Instagram. So had some people do that. Thank you very much. I won't name drop you yet until you ask us to. Well, today's episode is going to be pretty cool. We have, I think we got some pretty good feedback with the last episode that was more topical. It wasn't brand specific, didn't focus as much on that format, but it was a little bit more topical. We covered Rolex GMTs throughout the history. So if you're a Rolex fan, if you're a GMT master fan, go and check that out in our last episode. And today's episode, we decided on pilot's watches. And we didn't limit ourselves to one brand like IWC or Bell & Ross. We've done episodes on both of them already. So
Great
instead, really good episodes. Instead, what we decided to do, we took a little bit of inspiration from a nice little hobby of ours from fantasy football, and we decided to do like a draft style pick of a list of pilot's watches. So so you want to walk us through how that process went with just kind of like nominating and just sort of lobbing up watches?
So me and Brett, spoke about this a few days ago, and we were thinking, okay, how do we want to approach this? Because I think inherently pilot watches really aren't known to be very expensive, but you would be surprised that a lot of these watches can get up $20,000-$40,000. So we were like, okay, we can't just go crazy here. We're just going to go find some really cool watches that won't connect with anybody. But so we kind of budgeted ourselves. We said, okay, let's say, hey, a normal in parentheses there collection budget over a lifetime, let's say it's $15,000, and you're just a big pilot watch fan. You might be a pilot, you might just be an aviation fan. So that's why we kind of came out of that budget number of 15,000, because it gave you something to play with. Get maybe one really nice branded watch, and then a couple medium to middle tiers, or get three middle tiers. You really have a lot to play with here. So with all that being said, I picked out 5 or 6, and he picked out 6 or 7, or vice versa. And we said, okay, here's what we're going to throw into the brainstorming bucket, and then we'll pick from here.
And there was one other stipulation we had. I thought of a scenario where, so what if one person picked one watch that was like $7,000, one picked one that was $7,000 as well, or $7,500. So we made a stipulation that we each had to put at least one watch under the $1,000 mark, and only one. So there was a minimum of 2 that made that criteria. And then we actually put a third one in there. So that's kind of how the list was made. It was just anything and everything under, I guess technically under $13,000 was eligible for the list. So go ahead and kick us off.
and to kind of just make it a little more interesting, obviously I figured most people would think this, but we said, okay, you can't just pick one watch for $14,000 and say, okay, I'm done. This is a collection. We wanted you to have multiple, and I feel like once the collection status really starts at 3 watches, so we said, okay, we need to at least have 3 watches in here. I think we both ended up kind of figuring out what 3 we would want, and so we'll see how it goes. But so that is the stipulation. You can't go over 15,000. Obviously we're not talking taxes, we're just talking buying the watch at retail price, what what the watch costs, so nothing going over or going under if you buy it secondary. So it's at retail price. You don't have to worry about taxes or anything, so it's just the cost of the watch, and you have to have at least 3 watches. So with all of that being said, I'll list a few of them, and I'll let Brett list a few more. But the watches that we ended up picking, starting, I guess, kind of near the lowest. I think they're in fairly
I think this is
price
just a
point,
very random
yeah,
order.
order. But the first one that we found was, more basic watch that pretty much anybody can get, is the Orient Pilot RA, and then we jumped up to the Hamilton Khaki Aviation Day Date Automatic. Those are sitting around $265 for the Orient, and then right at $1,000 for the Hamilton. And again, if you haven't seen our Hamilton episode, definitely go back. We really go into detail about the khakis watch, and everything that Hamilton stands for and has done in the past. So it's a great episode to go check out if you haven't. And then we started talking about a lot of these watches ended up being watches that we've mentioned in the past or did full breakdowns on. And another one was the Longines Spirit. So we did the Longines Spirit 37 millimeter, which comes in around $2,400. And we also did the Longines Spirit Zulu Time, which is a great looking watch. But Brett, I know, has an opinion on that. That comes around $3,150.
It's not too bad
for that watch. Yeah. But then after that, we ended up going with the Bell & Ross BR03, which, of course, we did another episode on those guys. Bell & Ross and IWC are really right there neck and neck when it comes to being known for their pilot watches and being in that world. So we had to include at least one Bell & Ross. And then we jumped right over to the Breitling Classic AV Chrono P51 Mustang, which is another watch. Is kind of, Breitling comes out with so many different watches, but so you really need to do your own research when it comes to Breitling's Navitimers and all these pilot watches that they come out with. But this is one that I thought, for the price point, sticking around that $5,000 price point, that Breitling really likes to cling on to. So I wanted to include this one, which came in at $5,800.
Yeah. And for the rest of that list, to round out the final, what is it? We've got 7 left here, I believe, or
6 or 7. Yeah.
6. Can't even count. We've got the Cartier Santos-Dumont. We also did a Cartier episode, and the Santos, very, very cool fact that comes out of a brand that's so associated with fashion. Arguably the very first pilot's watch. So that watch, we marked it at $7,050. One of my submissions, the most expensive watch that made the list here, actually was the Zenith Pilot Big Date Flyback. This released very recently in 2023, and it's aesthetically, it's a really, really awesome looking watch. It looks every bit the cost, the Flyback chronograph functionality onto it's amazing watch. One of David's submissions over here, the IWC Pilot's Watch Chronograph Top Gun. So we've got a special edition IWC there. That one coming in at $8,950. Another submission from David, the Christopher Ward C8 UTC Worldtimer. So we have a Worldtimer for $1,400 right here. We just did a Christopher Ward episode. If you haven't listened, go check it out. I know we keep saying that, but again, a lot of these we've done episodes on. So just in case you're getting curious, want to give you a live update there. So go check that out. And one of the themes, a big theme, probably the biggest, was the value that Christopher Ward have. So again, here we've got a world time complication for $1,400. Pretty awesome. One of my submissions, the second most expensive watch on the list, the Breitling Navitimer, the new B01, 43 millimeter, I believe, on that. So big chunky boy. That's $9,200 US. Also put in the Tudor Black Bay GMT, $4,400.
Classic.
Yep, classic. I know it's probably a little bit overdone at this point, but
still a beautiful watch.
Yeah, still beautiful. And then finally, a little sleeper of mine, the Bulova Lunar Pilot for $525. Man, this is a cool watch. So curious to see what all happens here.
Yeah, I think the Bulova watch really, the Lunar Pilot's a beautiful watch. It just, of course, like a lot of these watches, they get bad names with, I guess, who makes them and the stereotypes. But the Bulova Lunar Pilot is a very underrated watch.
Yep. All right, everybody. So, a little heads up here. David and I actually did the draft ahead of this recording. So, we recorded that in one clip. We're going to play that clip next for you. It's just a few minutes long where we go down this list of watches that we just called out and we each pick our three. So, the only reason that I'm inserting this and giving everybody this disclaimer is that just in case the audio sounds a little bit different, we used one microphone instead of two. Again, we were just live in person hanging out. So, we just thought, hey, this will be fun. Let's just pop the list open and kind of do this in like a draft style. So we'll go ahead and play that now, and then we'll come back right after. So it's now time for the draft. Like I said, we each have a budget of $15,000. We have to have a minimum of 3 watches. And so, yeah, David, do you want to go first? Am I going to go first? How we never said how we're going to decide it. Should we flip a coin? Flip a coin. David's got the coin. You have a quarter. What do we call in the air? All right, let's go. Tails.
Woo! It's heads. Guess whose time it is? All righty. I think when you think of a pilot's watch, you really think of one brand and one brand only. For me, my first pick of a watch is going to be the IWC Pilot's Watch Chronograph Top Gun, which does come at a hefty price tag. So this took a little bit of, trying to plan out what my second and third watch will be, because it knocks out over half of my budget, coming in at $89.50. I thought it was $88.50, so I even lost an extra $100 that I thought I would have. So $89.50.
All right, so yeah, IWC, kind of saw that one coming. David hinted a little bit at that earlier. So my first watch, I'm looking at this list. We see the Breitling Navitimer, the Zenith Pilot Big Date. Those are the top pricey ones, along with the Cartier Santos. Another Breitling, Bell & Ross, Tudor GMT. I think in this case, I'm going to go with the Breitling Navitimer. I'm going to leave the more expensive Zenith off the board. I'm going to take the Breitling. I think it's probably the second most common or most well-known pilot's watch after David's IWC. $9,200. That's going to be my pick. It's a little bit more on the costly side, but I think to combat David's IWC,
the next watch for me, and this is coming strictly off of looks alone, which, as you know, if you've listened to this watch podcast a few times, I'm more of the looks guys. Brett's more of the mechanical side. Yeah. He likes to know what the watch will do for you. So I know Brett has actually, I don't want to say ripped up this watch in the past, but has talked down on this watch for the price tag. But the watch I am going to go with is the Longines Spirit Zulu Time 39 for $31.50. So again, this watch, beautiful watch. It really has a military S to it. I think it's probably the prettiest Longines out there.
All right, so with that selection, let's give a quick little recap. David's first 2 watches, the IWC Pilot's Watch Chronograph Top Gun and the Longines Spirit Zulu Time 39. Currently, you're sitting at a spent budget of $12,100. So you have, what is that, $3,900 left in the tank. So just wanted to make that quick call out. So my next watch, where do we go from here? We've got a Tudor Black Bay GMT on the board. That's probably the most popular, but doing some quick math, I don't think I can come up with that.
Yeah.
What do we got? Tight. What do we got? 4,400, and my Breitling is at 9,200. Yeah, I'm using a calculator if you guys can hear that. That puts me at 13,600 if I go Tudor Black Bay GMT. Other notable references around there. I can't afford the Cartier. Can't afford the Zenith. I think I'm going to go Black Bay GMT. Actually, you know what? No. Fuck. This sucks. This sucks.
Trust me, because I wanted to go with the Tudor Black Bay as well, but I thought, man, if I get there, I would have $300 to play with, and I would be pretty much at my budget. I really couldn't. I would be going shopping at Macy's for a watch for my third one.
I am going to go ahead and take it, though. I'll take the Tudor Black Bay GMT anyway. I'm going to run my budget up, and I think this will be fun because my third watch, after you pick your third, it will leave me with several options, I think.
Yeah, this is really, I'm at 12-1. This is really a tough spot. keeping the hard budget at 15,000 because there's a lot of good options here. Obviously, we all know I love some Bell and Ross watches, but really most of them are just above 3 grand. So being at 12, if I was at 12, it would even be possible. But being with Bell and Ross being known for their pilot watches, it really makes me want to go there. Some of the notable Bell and Ross pilot watches are the BR03 and all of the variations of that. The gyro compass and just the BR03, just basic, is another good watch.
So right now there's a cutoff. Sorry, I'm trying to share the mic with you. So right now there's a cutoff with David's budget. So what's left here is the Orient Pilot RA, the Bulova Lunar Pilot, the Hamilton Khaki Aviation Day-Date Automatic, the Christopher Ward C8 Worldtimer, and the Longines Spirit 37. But you've already got a Longines Spirit Zulu time.
Yeah, the Christopher Ward or the Hamilton. And that's really where I'm torn at. And I'm sure Brett already realized that I'm torn between the two. The Christopher Ward is right around $1,400, and the Hamilton is right under 1,000, or right at 1,000. We love the Hamilton khakis. We've talked about in our past episodes. If you haven't listened to that, go check it out. It's a great watch. I mean, for the value, the history of Hamilton, it's something to really be proud of and have. And then Christopher Ward, we talked about just a couple episodes ago, being the most bang for your buck that we really see around in the world today. Being, what was their old saying, was the cheapest, most expensive watch on the market. And so it's really a tough decision. I'm leaning Christopher Ward just out of looks alone, and having all of the cities around the bezel, which I think is a really cool feature. But again, the most bang for your buck is what I'm going for here. So I think I'm going to go with the Christopher Ward. That is the Christopher Ward C8 UTC Worldtimer for $1,400, which that was really the third watch that I was thinking about here. So that would be my 3-watch pilot collection. Would be the IWC Pilot's Watch Chronograph Top Gun, the Longines Spirit Zulu Time 39, and then the Christopher Ward C8 UTC Worldtimer. Again, if I had, let's say, $15,000 to play with.
Okay, so I have a total budget left of $1,400. So that kicks out rather, the Longines Spirit 37. That was really what I wanted. So I'm going to go Bulova Lunar Pilot. Cost me $525. So it saves me right around $1,000 on my budget. So a little bit less spent than David. And now let's go ahead and get into that watch. Awesome. So welcome back, everybody. Hope that you all survived that clip. I really hope that it comes out well. Jokes aside, let's go ahead and get into the Bulova Lunar Pilot here. So we are going to do just a little tiny history lesson before jumping into the specs, and then we'll just kind of talk about these watches. And look, truth be told, aside from some of the watches that we're just are very familiar with, like the Tudor GMT and so on, some of these watches we're very unfamiliar with. So it'll be a little bit of learning kind of in real time. We've obviously, looked these watches up and researched them, but some of these brands we've never covered. So I think this will be really fun. So a little bit of history on the Lunar Pilot. Omega, of course, holds that prestigious title of the Moon Watch, but Bulova also has a really, really cool connection to space. So designed in 1969 specifically for NASA astronauts, the Bulova Lunar Pilot underwent a lot of testing alongside other timepieces that ultimately did not make it. And Omega Speedmaster received the official nod from the space agency. However, the Bulova Lunar Pilot was not entirely out of the picture, because in 1971, during the Apollo 15 mission, astronaut Colonel Dave Scott sported his personal Bulova Lunar Pilot on the lunar surface. So this is the same Apollo mission that Buzz Aldrin was on. While not officially sanctioned, this act did cement the Bulova presence on the moon. So that makes this a really, really unique piece, and it's a kind of a cool little horological wrinkle in space history. And so, of course, many, many years later, in 2016, Bulova reissued this version, the current version of this chronograph. So the modern iteration does stay true to that original look with the chronograph function and a moon phase complication, a little bit of a nod to that connection in the more recent issue, back to that achievement of being worn on the moon. So very, very cool. So given a little bit of history, we're going to go down the specs really quick. So, as I mentioned, this watch came out in 2016. The reissue, of course, stainless steel, 45 millimeter diameter, though. that kind of threw me off, and that for as cool as I think this
Yeah.
watch is, that's horrible.
It's big.
14.5 millimeters case thickness. That's also very thick. Only 50 meters of water resistance, 50 hours of power reserve, and the cost here, their website is a little bit back and forth, but between I would say 6 and 900. Some models are marked down, and I'm sure you can get some discounts, but between 6 and 900. So again, it is the cheapest watch on here. I know that I listed 525. There was another site that had one. So
Yeah.
again, I think you get a lot of bang for your buck with this. I mean, if you're somebody that is listening to this and you're like, I don't really know anything about the Breitling, I've never heard of Zenith, like if some of those bigger brands just don't appeal to you, or if your budget is just tighter, I think this is a really, really awesome watch because it does have a lot of space history. It is automatic. Bulova, yeah, they're not the sexiest name in the watch industry, but they've been around for a long time, and I
Yeah.
don't know.
They're
I mean,
dependable.
yeah, I would imagine so. I mean, like, I had a Bulova that I wore for many years through like late college, and then the first few years working professionally for 3 or 4 years. That was a everyday watch that I
That
wore
watch
was a
saw some
Bulova.
things, didn't
Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, some late nights there.
it? Yeah.
But yeah, to kind of cap off the Bulova Lunar Pilot here, again, chronograph. It does have these kind of red hands and different little bits throughout the dial that are inspired by the original six hand automatic movement with that moon phase
Mhm.
complication. So again, I think you get a lot of bang for your buck. Stylistically, it's straightforward.
It's a great all around, just again, pilot's watch. If you want more of a tool looking watch, this would definitely check a lot of boxes for somebody that's just looking for, maybe the start to a collection. This would be a great
Yeah,
kickoff if you like chronographs. And again, at that price point, the only thing, like you said to me, is really the size. But I feel like Bulova is really known for they always normally seem to have bigger watches. That's one of the, even if that's a jab at Bulova, I feel like they do have a lot of big watches in their collection. So, this kind of rings true to the rest of them.
do you want to do like a quick little recap of kind of like where we're
Yeah.
at and then jump ahead? Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, just wrapped up the Bulova Lunar Pilot. We also have on my side, we have the Tudor Black Bay GMT remaining, and then the Breitling Navitimer B01. But I think David and I were going to alternate. So David, you can rattle off your list and then jump into your first watch.
Yeah, so my the first watch I'm going to talk about today is actually going to be the Christopher Ward Worldtimer C8 UTC. Again, this watch comes in at $1,400, and then after that, I'll jump in about the Longines Spirit Zulu, and then wrap it up with my favorite watch of the draft, the IWC Pilot's Watch Chronograph, the number one overall pick, the Top Gun, not Top Time. And so yeah, let's jump on into the Christopher Ward watch right here. So again, the Christopher Ward C8 UTC Worldtimer. Again, like I said in the draft, for the watch enthusiasts who crave functionality of a Worldtimer complication but are mindful of price, the Christopher Ward C8 UTC is really the watch for you. This watch came out in 2020. It is an innovative watch that stands out for its user-friendly Worldtimer function too. So you're not worrying about the complicated functions that you won't be able to learn, or you're scared you're going to mess with the watch. This watch is very straightforward, again, with the Worldtimer functions of all the cities across the world. The watch features a legible dial with clear markings, ensuring you can easily navigate the world time function. Again, you'll notice a lot of these pilot watches, they're very legible, bold, bright numbers and just
Mm-hmm.
functions on it, because again, you got to think, using it as a tool, you're wanting this to be very easy to read while you maybe are working a fighter pilot, or just any type of pilot. You don't want to have to be squinting and having to figure out what your watch says. So you'll see that as a very common theme through all of these pilot watches. But lastly, again, what I really want to drive home for you guys, this is probably the best value in the draft. So as
Yeah.
I said, the watch came out in 2020, stainless steel, 42 millimeters. A lot of these pilot watches, also another common theme I think we'll see is there's no small dials on this. You're working 42, 44 millimeters, and that really holds true when you're having to make something with such bold letters. You don't want too many of them getting smaller. Obviously, the Longines Zulu time's probably the smallest one, being at 39 millimeters. But if we're all being honest here, we know that's more of a stylistic watch than a tool
Yeah.
watch.
Yeah.
But again, the case thickness here is 12.2 millimeters with a water resistance of 120 meters, which is still fairly good for a pilot's watch. Again, not anything close to a diver's. It does run on a Salida SW330-1 automatic movement with the Worldtimer complication obviously being with that Salida with a power reserve of 50 hours. So, again, for the price point here, that's pretty common. I feel like it's nothing great to write home about, but it's also nothing to sit here and complain about. And the cost variation on Christopher Ward's website again is $1,400.
Yeah, I like it. It's not my favorite from just a purely aesthetic point of
Hmm.
view, but I mean, yeah, if you don't like the mainstream, because you just talked about like the tachymeter scale on the
Hmm.
Bulova, just looking the same. I mean, some watches are going to incorporate things like that. This one, to me, it doesn't. I mean, it's got a unique like look and approach to it. It's very like militaristic
Yeah.
almost. So yeah, I feel like if
And you'll
if you're
find that that's
somebody,
definitely a common theme on the three watches I picked personally, with it
yeah,
being this one, the Zulu time, and then the IWC pilots. They're all very militaristic, special forces look watches.
yeah, yeah, true. Yeah, so I mean, if that's your style, this one also has kind of like the two crowns on the side. It's sort of like the 2 and the 4 kind of position, which is mark certainly of older watches.
Hmm.
We've seen quite a few actually come up throughout doing history and kind of like research portions like that in the past. So yeah,
Yep.
it's a cool watch for someone that is looking for something new. The
Hmm.
next watch that we're going to go on to, the Tudor Black Bay GMT. I mean, what can I say about it? What can I not say about it? It's a watch that came out in 2017, and I think if you know, I think the overwhelmingly vast majority of the watch market, we were all so happy that this thing came out because closely, especially now, like looking back on it, because closely shortly after that watch came out, the Rolex GMT specific hype got so crazy right around
Yeah.
the pandemic. And so to have an option at a lower price point from
Hmm.
sister brand, and I mean, some people like me, some people just prefer Tudor in some ways, right? Like I prefer the Tudor Black Bay over the Submariner. I don't prefer the Tudor Black Bay over your Yachtmaster,
No.
right?
Yeah.
So in some ways, like I do, and so, but the point being, it opened up the market. So people that wanted that family and that style of watch, they could go get one. They could go get the white dial Pepsi. They could go do the Tudor Pepsi, whatever it was that they wanted. And so, we've covered this in a prior episode. I believe this was like our second or third episode where we covered Tudor. So, all the way back to the beginning. But this watch, again, like I said, came out in 2017, stainless steel, 41 millimeters, 14.7 millimeters thick with a water resistance of 200 meters.
Hmm.
This watch has the Tudor caliber MT5652, which is COSC certified, beating at 4 hertz or 28,800 vibrations per hour. The new calibers have 70 hours of power reserve and are getting up there at 4,400 for a Tudor sports watch. So, GMT function. We've got a sliding, or we've got a articulating bezel, COSC certified chronometer movement. We've got the classic snowflake hand and that same design language that the Black Bay, has had and people love. So yeah, I mean, this is like the everyman's GMT. It's just, yeah. At this point, like I said
Yeah.
earlier, I almost didn't draft it because it's just,
So over talked.
yeah. I mean, almost not even just like over talked, but I think because Rolex, I mean, like we just did that GMT episode, because Rolex is so hyped and Tudor follows so close along in their shadow. I mean, so many of the Tudor watches are
Yeah.
kind of just like the
Well,
little brother knockoff or the
yeah.
little brother
So
version. So to me, I think it gives you two ways to talk about the same watches. So it's just like double the hype and double the coverage to me. But it's
yeah.
still a great watch. It's not a knock on it. It's just one that for the watch enthusiast, people like us that consume and create content, at times it can get a little tiring. I'm hoping that we get a big update this year. It watches in one. I'm hoping that we see some color, a green bezel or something like that.
Yeah.
So something further following the Rolex DNA this year would be really refreshing, because at this point, um, yeah, it's just a little overdone. Maybe that's all.
Yeah. You know, Tudor, like we said, a lot of people that when you own a Tudor, you're like, well, it's not the little brother. It's, yeah, it's on, and it again does have great value for the pricing. But watches like this really show it's, hey, you can't ever get this watch because it's always on back order for 2 years. You're waiting, and even if it's available, you probably don't want to pay triple the price of this one. So this is,
Yeah.
I hate the nickname and it's degrading, but it's true in some sense. The poorer man's Rolex is right here, but again, you're really hitting the value. You're getting the quality,
Mm-hmm.
but you're just going to be at that $4,400 range versus 10. And I love the watch. I think it's a great looking watch. I would definitely buy one of these down the road. Is probably, if you're not looking for a tool watch, which I told you I drafted 3 really militaristic tool looking watches. If you're going for aesthetic, this and the Zulu time with the Spirit Zulu, which is what I'm about to talk about, is they're at the top of the list with just the best looking watches
Yeah.
probably that we've spoken about today.
Some people are going to say it's a poor man's Rolex. Like, I look at it this way, because I've got Rolexes and I've got Tudors. I look at it this way: if you care about what people think about your watch, you should go find a GMT. But if you're just like a watch nerd, yeah, there's so much value here. Like you said, it's sub 4400. It's COSC certified.
Mm-hmm.
It's I mean, yeah, it's an in-house caliber, which is cool. I mean, they continue to update the bracelet has been like a kind of a low point of these models of the Black Bays, but they're adding little updates to it, so they're kind of fixing that problem. That's why I'm saying, like, this year I just hope that maybe we get a little bit of pop,
Yeah.
a little bit of
Well, I
color, something
I
new.
love I love the red Black Bay 58, the red bezel that they came out
Yes.
with last year. Beautiful watch. I hate
Yes.
it's pretty small if I'm remembering correctly, 37 millimeters, somewhere around there, right? It's not 39, is
Wait,
it?
what? You talking about the
The
all red bezel?
Yeah, is it
No, that's the
39?
Heritage Black Bay. That one's big. That's
Oh, okay.
41 or
I'm getting that.
42.
Okay, I'm
Yeah.
getting that one mixed up with the
Hmm.
uh, the the 54. And so, I
That
like
one's
that watch.
37. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the red bezel Black Bay. Great watch. I wish they had a little bit more variation. And maybe, there's an opportunity here by Tudor to really do things that everybody wishes Rolex would do. There's a lot of rumors like, man, I really wish, Rolex would do a fully red bezel in the black, do
Mm.
something like
Yep.
that. And that's what they did last year. And I really hope they would dig into that more this year. And I guess, like we said, we're going to find out here in a few weeks. But that is an opportunity, in my opinion, for Tudor to really take off and grab hold of a market, because Rolex, as we've spoken about in the past, normally plays it pretty safe. They do slight variations of things they've already made half the time. Last year I know they
Yeah.
did the emoji and the celebration, and that was a little bit different, but it was honestly so far out there, not a lot of people liked it. But
Yeah.
Rolex normally plays it pretty safe, which again, I love most of Rolex's watches that they come out with, so I'm not going to sit here and complain about it. But when you wish there was a little bit new variation on some watches, then that's something that Tudor could really do and really grab hold
Hmm.
of the market. And maybe they'll do it this year.
I'm hoping so. Before we go to our next watch, I wanted to kind of pause real quick, because we talked about the first two at the 525 and then the $1,400 mark. And so the Black Bay at 4,400, we're about to go to yours, which is
Hmm.
3,150. So I just wanted to just kind of reset the episode real quick. So I think once you finish up with yours, I
Hmm.
think, why don't we just have like a little bit of a discussion, like comparing these two watches, the Tudor Black Bay GMT, and then I'll pass it over to David, introduce this watch, and then
Yeah.
we'll talk about the two being in a similar price point.
So the next watch that we are going to talk about is the Longines Spirit Zulu time, 39 millimeters. Like I said before, most of the tool GMTs you're going to see is going to at least be a 40 millimeter, if not up to 44. The Spirit Zulu time is coming in at 39. It's more of a dress out. I don't want to say dressy, but more of a stylistic watch than a tool watch. This watch was introduced in 2019, and it really captures the essence of vintage aviation with a classic pilot aesthetic. Clean lines, legible dial with bold hands, and a rotating bezel evoke the spirit of the exploration from a bygone era. Really appealing to pilots, history buffs, and all of those in between that really love exploration inspired timepieces. And again, that's what this watch really is more of a fixture of a past time where, hey, it's meant to look more vintage than it really is. It's a vintage take, or it's a modern take on a vintage look, put it that way. And I know
Yep.
we talk about that a lot of times with a lot of Tudors even that
Hmm.
do that. And that's what Longines really did here, and it really exploded. Um, Coming at 3150, I don't think is a horrible price point. I know we've kind of talked about in the past.
The specs get fun with these two watches. I think to me they get fun
Yeah.
because they're pretty different. They're kind of
Hmm.
like far off, but I do think it's a really cool watch. It's got a really cool place in their lineup, and
Yeah.
and
It's one of their
it's
better
yeah,
watches, and again, it
yeah.
has 100 meters of water resistance. It comes with a caliber L7 989.3, which is a ETA movement, ETA A31 movement, and it's beating at 25,200 vibrations per hour, which is 3.5 hertz, and it has a power reserve of 64 hours. So again, we've talked about in the past, hinting at really good ETA movements, really bad ETA movements, Alita, same thing, and all the different movements that really are off the shelf. And having an ETA movement at 64 hours, you're really on that upper echelon of movements off the shelf, but which is, I think, kind of their excuse of saying, hey, this is why it's 3150, which is again what we talked about in our Longines episode, is the downfall of it. Hey, you're getting an off the shelf movement for over $3,000.
They do like run the manufacturing facility.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know like how much goes into that. I would assume that it gets you like the ability to really regulate the movements. I mean, like I don't understand if they staff it or how that operation works, but I would assume that there's a pretty big benefit to having at least the capability to oversee, to manage, and to maintain. So I think that's one of those things that pushes the price point up too. I think
Yeah.
Longines has got a great name though. They
Oh
can
yeah.
bank on that. We talked about the Dolce Vitas. The Dolce Vitas are the
Mm-hmm.
more egregious pricing error.
Yeah.
As much as I didn't really agree with this when we first started out the podcast, I mentioned in an episode, maybe like 10 episodes back, that I kind of have flipped my opinion on the off the shelf thing.
Mm-hmm.
And especially like in the case of this, and I just think it's important to understand that I didn't know that at the time,
Yeah.
and I don't think that we covered it in our last episode either. So I wanted to bring that up,
Yeah.
that they do manage the the production facility, but again, I'm not super keen on exactly what that entails.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the look of it is cool. Like you said, you're kind of alluding to that like neo vintage. It's kind of like the faux patina. Like Hamilton do it a lot. If
Yeah.
anyone, you're big Hamilton fans, the khaki feel like the Murph, the Black Bay
That gives a
58.
very world. That gives a very Hamilton to me. Just when I think of Hamilton, I think of World War II. Like it just something. The infantry is wearing
Just a
it,
field
storming the
watch.
beach of Normandy. It's a World War II field watch vibe is what Hamilton gives me. This is more of a explorer age type watch to me, exploring African, a
Yeah.
safari type watch. It really gives more of a, I don't know, maybe it's me personally, but when I think of the Longines Spirit Zulu time, it really gives that explorer vibe.
It's a
Just
great
being
looking
out in the
watch.
safari. Yeah, it's a great looking watch, and yeah, the 5 stars that are on the dial really gives it that pop and just differentiates it from other watches. What the real question here is, would you rather buy a watch like this for 3150, or would you rather buy a Black Bay GMT for 44? You're jumping over $1,000. You're getting an in-house movement with the Black Bay GMT. But you're you're definitely getting a more copied watch. That they're just two very different styles. I guess it really comes
Yeah.
down to the person. If you're more, hey, I dress down, I do outdoors things, I'm a hunter, I'm this, I'm normally going the direction of the Spirit Zulu time. If you're more of a city guy that wears suits and dresses up way more often, I think the Black Bay GMT is definitely the way to go.
Yeah. I think that Pepsi bezel too like you said, yeah, it's not like the field watch application of the
No.
GMT kind of, that neo vintage styling and just
Hmm.
the actual functionality of it being a traveler's watch. The Pepsi, maybe it's because we did the GMT episode and we talked about the Pan Am, the branding and just whatever.
Hmm.
So yeah, I definitely get that. I think our we've got a friend Chris that has one, and in
That's
his line of work,
beautiful.
he's always kind of dressed up to the nines, and so he looks great, but he's got the white dial GMT. So yeah, that fits a lot better, I think, than a Zulu time. Well, this will be my last watch of the day. It will be the fifth watch total before David wraps up. And so now that we've talked about the kind of middle tiers with the Black Bay and the Zulu time, this will be kind of the high tier. So I picked the Breitling Navitimer B01. That was my first pick in the draft. It's a watch that I really kind of admire, like from a distance, in the sense
Hmm.
that I've never gone and seeked out to just try a bunch of them on and that type of thing. Not like the hugest advocate throughout the podcast and everything, but
Of Breitling, which is surprising when you picked it, because
yeah,
when I saw you throw it in the pile of watches, I was like, "Oh,
you're
I
probably
can't believe I
surprised at
didn't think
that.
about it." I was
Yeah,
like, "How did I forget about the Navitimer?" And you beat me to it, and so it was very surprising when you threw it in there, and then even more when you picked it, because it is a great watch. But Brett is notorious for, I don't want to say downplaying Breitling or really not know much about him when we started this podcast forever ago, but it was not a brand that he was really, in love with, like say Omega or other brands
yeah.
when we started this.
I've always liked the Breitling divers, but everything else, including and especially the Navitimer, I've just never really liked stylistically. But the reason that it was put, like you said, like into the list in the first place and then picked from me, because I also put in the Zenith.
Yeah.
So I think maybe that was just a little bit of like daydreaming putting the Zenith in because it's like 11K, and so it really left you with just a super
You had
super
the
tight
Zenith
budget.
and Bulova and the Orient.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's why I went away from that. But no, honestly, the reason the Navitimer made it here is because a chronograph is something that I'm really interested in. That's kind of like one of the only things that, in terms of like seeking out, watches. And you asked me the other day, like, what's the next watch? And I said, there is no next watch. It's just
Hmm.
right now I'm just kind of cruising. I'll probably actually sell off something before I actually buy something. But a chronograph will be, when the time comes, the next thing that I want to pursue. And of course, you've got the Omega Speedmaster. I researched quickly one night and I was like, all right, well, take the Speedy off the table. What else is out there? And the Navitimer came up
Yeah.
like over and over again. And I really, really love the Navitimer now.
Yeah.
And I mean, I like it in certain setup. I love the just the clean like black and white on Breitling. I think because it's almost vintage in the way that they keep their watches styled today. Like it's not
Hmm.
super updated and it's not super just, it's changed and formatted for like the masses these days. Like a lot of watch
Yeah.
brands do that, like Rolex and some of these other ones included. Tudor. But Breitling, I think when it comes to their pilots and their aviation watches, they stay away from that. So
Yeah.
1952 is when the Navitimer first released. That was also just kind of an era when aviation piloting, that was in its heyday. We just did the GMT Master
Yeah.
episode, came out just a few years after this watch did. So, a lot of people, companies included, were looking for reliable tools to navigate. We've talked about so many episodes and navigators where these instruments and watches were necessary to go into planes.
Yeah.
Some of these companies, Tag Heuer, Breitling, the first companies to outfit cockpits and planes with these instruments. So natural, of course, for a company like Breitling to then go and make the Navitimer
Yeah.
wristwatch. So iconic timepiece, of course, featuring the groundbreaking. Although I just, this is one of the things about Breitling I just kind of like roll my eye at. But the slide rule bezel, allows pilots to do calculations. And to me, I'm just thinking like, how many people have actually ever done this, right? And we're still putting this on these watches today. That's why it's so freaking bulky, right? That's the
Yeah.
that's the only gripe of it to get it out of the
Big
way
back
right
in
now.
the 50s to 80s.
Yeah. So So yeah, and very cool history, right? I mean, David talked earlier, like, some of these watches evoking like World War II vibes and stuff. And these I can definitely see on the wrist of, someone flying in like a P-51 Mustang and
Oh yeah.
calculating fuel consumption with their
Yep.
freaking slide rule bezel that the British Navy, purchased for them from Breitling.
Yeah.
So
And really the biggest thing I'll say about this is obviously Brett just went through the specs and everything, but Breitling is known for doing out there watches, very complicated dials and bezels and everything.
yeah,
There's this
aggressive
is
styling.
yeah, this is the best looking aggressive watch that Breitling makes. Obviously, if you've listened to the podcast, I love the Breitling Super Ocean Heritage. I think, at some point that watch I'll buy. It's simple, it's very dressed up, dressed down. But if you're looking for a crazy Breitling dial, this is the sleekest, most complicated dial out there. And I've
It's
seen
so busy.
when last week when I was in San Antonio and I saw that bat girl that we were talking about the last episode, I also saw one of these,
Mm,
and it's beautiful on the wrist from afar. Up close, it's definitely the best. If you're looking for something, a Breitling, it looks like a Breitling.
yeah.
You see it, Breitlings are so out there on so many different planes of simple dials, complicated dials, somewhere in between. Obviously, even quartz watches. There's actually a Pilot's quartz watch that's out there now that I didn't even throw into the draft, but it's a pretty crazy looking. Has the 24-hour digital on the dial as well as the hands to make your
From
ground.
Breitling.
Yeah,
Oh yeah. They
yeah,
they do still make a bunch of digital watches too.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
interesting. Yeah,
it's they're interesting, but this is the most elegant, complicated dial that's out there in
yeah,
my opinion.
and it's definitely the most. I mean, just very well known watch too. I mean, the
Yeah,
Navitimer is, I think, like outside of like the Rolex crowd and the Rolex kind of family hype. Like this is probably, you know, I mean, it's Breitling's flagship model in my opinion. The Super Oceans are cool, but definitely the Navitimer to me, that's what I think of whenever I think of Breitling.
hmm
And so yeah, it definitely puts out a similar, what you want to say, not mystique, but just prestige
yeah,
among, like I said, when you exclude Rolex, there's just a few models. This being one of them. I think the Speedy being another one. So just a few examples there. But like I
yeah.
said, 1952, the B01 in-house movement that came out, that came along in 2017. So currently, yeah, stainless steel. 41 millimeters. I think they have several sizes of most of their watches though, and like 43, 45. So Breitling do offer
Yeah.
just an insane amount
From
of
40 to
variety.
46 half the time.
Yeah, I mean, you can get like 36 to 45 in almost every color.
Yeah.
So a lot of variety. That's another cool thing about Breitling.
Yeah.
13.9 millimeters case thickness with a water resistance of 300 meters, which is insane. Like I said, the Breitling caliber B01 beating at 4 hertz or 28,800 vibrations per hour. Power reserve on that also 70 hours. So COSC certified chronometer movement. Obviously, chronograph. It's 70 hours of power reserve, and all of this under 10K for $9,200. And case thickness 13.9 millimeters with water resistance of 30 meters, of course, being that chronograph. With the Breitling manufacturer caliber 01, like we just talked about, COSC certified chronometer movement, beating at 4 hertz with a power reserve of 70 hours, all coming in under 10K at 9,200. So,
hmm
like I talked about, like we both just talked about, the bezel, it's got a lot going on. The dial, pretty busy, pretty crazy, but COSC certified. Breitling, big, powerful name, especially in the world of tool watches. When you think about pilots' watches like this one and divers like the Super Ocean, um, I mean, yeah, a lot of great value. Like I said, you've got every size, every color available to you,
Yep.
and yeah, I mean, in the world of pilots' watches, this is as famous, as popular, in my opinion, that you can get. I mean, this is up
Yeah.
there with the best of them. I would put it on like a Mount Rushmore of pilots' watches, right alongside a Rolex GMT Master, and you
And
know,
some sort of IWC
I,
that
I
we're
was gonna
about to
say,
talk about.
I was gonna say potentially the IWC Top Gun, but definitely
Yeah.
an IWC as well. So
Yeah.
nice little segue into our last watch of the day here.
Yeah, I mean, as people, synonymous with luxury watches, Rolexes, IWC is synonymous with pilot watches. I mean,
Hmm.
this is where you go if you just get hired on as the new Delta guy. You should be going for an IWC. I mean, the International Watch Company. We did a full episode on it, and it's a great history, great watch. Definitely go back and again check that out. But this is one of my favorite. If you're just saying, hey, what do you think of when you think of a pilot's watch? I think of the IWC Top Gun. It debuted in 2007. The Top Gun is a symbol with the connection to the elite Navy fighter pilot program school, which is, of course, known as Top Gun in the movies. IWC Top Gun is a perfect embodiment of the program that it represents, with a blend of cutting edge technology, functionality, as well, making it a compelling choice for pilots and aviation enthusiasts alike for the lightweight durability that you might need in another tool watch, again, in the military or a civilian setting. These features make it reliable tools for pilots who require exceptional performance under pressure. Again, having the big bold letters, the easy to read dial, that's what a pilot's watch is really, again, known for. This is, like I said before, ceramic case at 44 millimeters, so you're getting back up to the bigger watch. It's obviously when you're wearing it as a Top Gun fighter pilot, you're going to need it to fit over clothes. You want it to be bigger. You don't want it to be lost in whatever you're wearing. With a case thickness of 14.6 millimeters and water resistance of 60 meters. It runs on the IWC caliber 69380 automatic chronograph movement, beating at 4 hertz with a power reserve of just 46 hours. Again, this is a limited piece, so with all of the movements and everything with it, it seems to have a smaller, just under 2-day power reserve.
Hmm.
And like we said at the beginning of this episode, the watch came in just under $9,000.
I've seen one of these in person. They don't really look 44 millimeter. They don't. I mean, I don't know if they feel like that after some time on the wrist, but they certainly
I
don't
mean,
look the 44 millimeter. It's a
I'm
good
sure
looking
it's
watch.
astounding. I'm sure it's astounding how light it is, being
Yeah,
44 millimeters, 14 and over 14 and a half millimeters
that's
thick.
a
And then you're a
big watch.
ceramic. Then you're ceramic. It probably feels like every normal stainless steel watch that's out there.
Yeah. I wonder, I mean, it'd be crazy to see the weight compared to all the rest of these because
Yeah.
we've got some chunky, thick ass watches
Yeah.
in this episode. Yeah, I bet the weight is a third of some of these in here. Yeah,
Yeah.
IWC really cool what they've done with their pilots watches. I mean, there's not a lot of like updates and, things like that to it. They they,
Hmm.
they take that similar kind of flow to some of the bigger, more popular brands in the watch world that, do the kind of slight updates every year. And there's, some things like, oh, you want to see the case diameter drop down by 1 millimeter or something
Yeah.
like that. And then, next year's version of the pilot's watch is going to have that. So they make those type of updates to their pilots watches. So I think it's cool to get like one of the one-offs like this. Is really cool.
Yeah.
Any like the special edition ones are going to be cool because it's going to be based on their in-house movements, which we
Hmm.
talked about. Their movements are amazing.
Yeah.
And yeah, again, it's coming from like the house of pilot watches almost. I mean,
Yeah.
that's almost like all IWC does. For as cool as like the Navitimer is, and as
Yeah.
cool as the GMT Master is, each of those brands have other things that they're very well known for.
Known for, yeah. Well, and
IWC
that's
is like the literal definition of
the
synonymous
pilot.
with.
Yeah, them and Bell and Ross. And I'm glad you said that, because what I was thinking to really wrap it up here, because I know we're pushing time. Um, when you're talking about pilots watches, you have to talk about IWC, because I mean, even if you're talking about the GMT Master 2s, yes, they're technically a pilot. They're GMT. The Tudor Black Bay GMT, they're technically pilot watches, but they also serve other functions of style. They really go out there and try to make a name for themselves outside of just an aviation watch. But IWC sticks with what they're known for. They are, when you think of, I need to buy a pilot's watch, when I'm looking for what a pilot's watch is, in your brain, you're picturing
Mhm.
some sort of an IWC, and I think that says it all.
And I love the little like red bits on it and the little like
Yeah.
wing
The red
or
plane
yeah,
that's on the
yeah, yeah,
second
the
hand. Yeah.
plane.
Yeah.
Yeah, not the wing, but the the plane
Yeah.
um is a really cool like little touch too. So yeah, it's a very cool aesthetic and it fits in line with like your Zulu time too. So
Yeah.
like you said, very militaristic on that. Um Well, yeah, I mean, I think with that, I
I think
mean,
that's it.
pretty
Yeah.
well like wraps us up with today's episode, and we've been like really pressed on time lately, so appreciate you guys being flexible with, like we said earlier, obviously, and you all heard we had an extra clip come in, and yeah, just being crunched on time. So we'll have a little bit more time coming up on the next episodes because April 1 being a Monday, that just means you're gonna have some time at the end of that month, but
Yeah.
right now we're definitely crunched for it. So we'll be able to do a little bit more research and get a little bit more history, kind of knocked out of the way, and do all of this in kind of like one sitting. So like this week we were literally scrambling to get recording times done. So with
Yeah.
all that being said, thanks for being patient with us. Thanks for sticking it out with us. And yeah,
Thank
like
you
we
for
said last week.
listening.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, thank you for listening. Definitely share the episode. Share last week's episode. If you're into this more topical discussion, hit us up and let us know. We've already had some
Yeah.
folks tell us, hey, Rolex Daytonas.
Yeah.
And we were like, damn, wish we had done Daytonas. We just did
GMTs.
some GMT. So
Yeah.
unfortunately it'll take us a while, but we will get around to a Daytona one. And I don't know, what are some other ideas that you've got coming up? I mean, craziest Grand Seiko dials. I mean, we've got a big Grand Seiko, I think, audience for sure. Obviously dive watches, but integrated
Yeah.
bracelets,
Yeah.
I like the build collection
Different.
though thing.
Yeah, and different pastel watches. I mean,
Yep.
there's different things out there that we can really touch base on, or just the craziest. We can talk about different types of celebration dials and emoji dials and things like that. That the most out there watches that the big name brands have came up with. I mean, Rolex
Yeah.
came up with those. We know Breitling's came up with some crazy ones. Omega, same thing. So the possibilities are endless. Again,
It's like
our
the biggest
mailboxes are
flops is
open.
what that
Yeah.
sounds like.
Yeah.
So,
Our
I mean,
mailboxes are open, and if you have any suggestions, any mailbag questions, just let us know. We
please
haven't
do.
really been putting many of those in the podcast lately, but we would definitely start that back if you guys have any questions that you want to ask us and maybe be answered on the next episode. So just let us know, and we'll be
Yeah.
back here in a couple weeks and with a surprise episode. We won't tell you what we're gonna do yet. I know the last couple times we've kind of given you a hint, but we'll just leave it. We'll leave it blank, and you'll just be surprised when it comes out.
Yeah. I mean, safe to say people like it. So, boom, echo everything David said. We'll catch you all in a few weeks. Thanks.